Welcome to the third session of our Downtown Democratic Club's Congressional District 10 Candidate Forum. I'm Richard Corman, President of Downtown Independent Democrats. I'd like to acknowledge our co-sponsoring clubs represented by Club Presidents Marion Rydell of Grand Street Democrats, Michael Kramer of New Downtown Democrats, Mar Fitzgerald and Cameron Krause of Village Independent Democrats, and Ray Klein of Village Reform Democratic Club. Those who attended our prior session know that Assemblymember Yuh-line Niou was called to an emergency legislative session in Albany and couldn't join us. So we're holding this session to accommodate that emergency. The format will be the same as for all the other sessions. So now I'd like to welcome Yuh-line Niou to our forum, and we will begin. Welcome, Yuh-line.
Thank you so much, Richard. And first, I want to apologize to everyone for missing the forum. As some of you may know, and as Richard just said, Governor Hochul actually called an emergency special session to pass historic gun reform legislation, as well as the Equal Rights Amendment.
So we're going to begin with the opening question. There are 13 candidates in this race with a wide range of experience, name recognition, and levels of engagement in and knowledge of our communities. Please introduce yourself and tell us why we voters should choose you to be our representative.
So first off, thank you for having me. Again, I wanted to just say that, I know that the issues that we were up in Albany for just now were issues that our community is very passionate about. And I hope that I did you proud as your representative, and thanks for making extra time for me today, as I know everyone is especially busy as we are going through these very difficult times. This pandemic, the housing affordability crisis, the worsening climate change have shown us that there's no time to waste in getting New York and our country back on track for a better and more sustainable future. And I know that we can do better, we have to do better, and we have to listen to our neighbors. We have to listen to our neighbors' needs and work swiftly to ensure that this is a pandemic recovery that lifts all New Yorkers. Together, we can take this moment and turn it into a generational call to action as inspiring and progressive as any of our state's history. I'm running today for the same reason that I launched my first campaign in 2016, because I see that people are hurting, because I see actions not being taken by our federal government. And I've demonstrated that I can build the community coalitions necessary to pass laws that help our people and drive those long overdue changes. Our healthcare workers and our home care aides protect our lives for a fraction of what they should be earning. Nobody can afford to wait here. My top legislative priority is taking back our economy and making sure that we are doing the right social infrastructure spending, passing the Green New Deal, taking our fight to working people in Albany to the hall, from the working people in Albany to the halls of Congress, and we can build an economy that works for regular New Yorkers. And I know that we have worked side by side for a very long time. For 6 years now. And as your Congress member, I will work hard to work hand in hand with each of you as we achieve these goals.
Talk about affordable housing. There is a crisis in affordable housing in the district and in the city in general. What specific policies and funding would you support for public housing, housing on public land like 5 World Trade Center, and any other ways you would approach this crisis?
So first off, housing insecurity is a crisis that our federal government has too long pushed off onto state governments that lack both the resources and the political will to address the core problems faced by tenants in our crumbling public buildings and unsafe units. As a lawmaker in Albany, I know that I have proven that I can build grassroots coalitions that shake up the apathy that pervades Washington, and to deliver meaningful policy reforms that promote better housing solutions for all. I believe that actions speak louder than words, and I think that I've made our public housing a priority for our entire district as well as for our state. And I firmly believe that the state absolutely had a financial responsibility for our public housing, just like I still firmly believe that our federal government needs to fully fund public housing. I was told time and time again that our public housing was the federal government's responsibility throughout all of the times that I've been working on the state level. And I believe that, the federal government is actually the reason why our public housing is in the state that it's in, right? It's divested year after year after year, and it's suffered decades of divestment. And that's why I fought for and won our first ever state dollars to support our public housing capital improvements, $1 billion in total in my time in Albany. That simply did not exist for public housing before, even though our state definitely had some of that money that we should have been able to spend. I have championed housing programs like a new Mitchell-Lama, and during the pandemic work to help folks stay in their homes. I, of course, champion our World Trade Center, 5 public housing plans, affordable housing plans. I'm hoping that we actually have truly deeply affordable housing. Our federal government must do more to ensure that our states are receiving support for our public and affordable housing commensurate with their need. And I will never hesitate from fighting to direct federal housing dollars to New York's public housing system. And many of the resources that we need exist. Congress just lacks the political will to get the job done for the American people. And this is why we need to do more than just elect Democrats. We must make sure that we are electing the right Democrats and who are unafraid to make their district's tenants a priority.
Thank you. Let's go to the environment and climate. The 10th anniversary of Superstorm Sandy is approaching. Given the reality of climate change, the serious and now even more serious concerns about achieving climate goals after the Supreme Court decision, and what that means for a district so close to the coastline, what's your position on the Green New Deal, and what specific policies do you support to protect our district from impending climate impacts?
Thank you for that question. Climate change is not a situation that we can afford to wait another year, 2, 4, 8 years, et cetera, to address. Right now, we are in a district that has Lower Manhattan and the shoreline of Brooklyn. We know fully well that we are frontline communities in this climate crisis. We've seen the flooding. We've seen the small businesses displaced by worsening storms. We've seen the huge and ever-growing costs to repair that the damage of natural disasters worsened by climate change would bring to our communities. And in Albany, I was so closely associated with the fight for climate resiliency and green investment that the progressives called the Assembly's proposal the Green New Deal with my name, NIOU. I will be a champion for these critical investments in Congress. One of my favorite parts of the Green New Deal is obviously Jamal Bowman's bill on making sure that we are actually greening our public school infrastructure. So I think that it's a really important bill. When I worked for the US EPA, I often talked to my teams about how we couldn't just talk about the environment, but also environmental justice. We have to recognize that there's environmental segregation every single step of our system. And the 10th Congressional District experiences staggering environmental segregation with public housing built right next to our highways in a way that worsens airborne pollution and causes our children to be more susceptible to asthma and other health issues. As a lawmaker, I have immersed myself in our environmental issues because I know they impact every other issue that we face as a state and a nation. And I know climate injustice when I see it, and I will not hesitate to put a national spotlight on climate injustices as the Congresswoman by demanding real accountability and tougher fines from those who exploit our communities and damage our environment. I think that we need to transition to a 100% clean electric economy. And I think that it touches on so many parts of our lives. Not only does it represent a major blow against climate change by phasing out the use of polluting fossil fuels, it's a victory of environmentalism more broadly and also for American energy security. We've been made acutely aware of how vulnerable our energy supply is. And I have actually seen how important it is to increase state and federal investment in green energy, including our green jobs. So not only would I fight to direct federal clean energy investment dollars towards New York, I believe we can embrace a clean energy future while also making Lower Manhattan and Brooklyn the nation's green tech and clean tech innovation hub. And not only does that—
Thank you, Ms. Niou.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Niou.
I had your screen up, so I'm sorry.
Staying with the Supreme Court, it has recently issued what we see as radical rulings. Roe v. Wade, of course, guns certainly, and today and the other day's EPA decision.
Yeah.
What legislation and policies would you support to address these specific issues and the Supreme Court itself?
So obviously you have seen that I just went up to Albany to fight for our protection here in New York State. And I will continue to fight on the federal level as well. I think that we need to codify Roe v. Wade. We need to make sure that we're expanding our courts, and we have to also make sure that we are, fully funding our services, especially for the states that are building in those protections, because we know that certain states are going to have the bulk of the financial responsibility now, because they are going to be sanctuaries for people who are not able to get protected. So I think that while we are in this crisis, we have to make sure that we are doing the right steps. I think that we have to be able to show that that we will work to ensure that all birthing people in the United States have access to affordable and equitable reproductive health care, regardless of where you live. And with regards to concealed carry, I don't agree with our mayor on how much and when he says this decision will make our city the wild east. But when, I think that this decision made by an illegitimate Supreme Court will recklessly disregard so many lives, and I think that it's a really important thing, and as you know, we passed some legislation in Albany, but I think that there's a couple of things that we missed, and I think that we need to make sure that we are continuing to pass stronger legislation to regulate the use of guns. We should not make AKs available to people. I think that people should not be able to carry those weapons when they're made for the military. And I think that there's a space to make sure that we are regulating that completely and ending the ability to access them.
Thank you.
Sure.
CD10 is a very diverse district where systemic racism and hate crime remain serious issues. What plans or policies do you have to address these deep-rooted social problems?
So, as you know, and as you've seen, I have also had my life threatened. I've also had messages that are very harmful said to me during this period of time. And I think that, there is no magic wand to ending hate or racism. What we need to do is we need to make sure that we have education. We have to have services, and we have to make sure that people are understanding that that everyone belongs here, right? And I think that part of that is making sure, for example, to have Asian American history in our textbooks, making sure that we are talking about the Holocaust, making sure that we are talking about all of these different moments in our history that are important to the shaping of our communities and the shaping of America. And we have to make sure that we are actually reminding people that people belong here and that everybody belongs here, and that that belonging will then hopefully led to an elimination of the hatred that our country was actually built on. The racism and the hate is state sanctioned, and we have to dismantle it every single step of the way. And so I think that there are many things that we have to dismantle throughout our policies, throughout our laws, throughout our lending systems, throughout the redlining that we see in insurance or in any of the products that we have. These are all places where racism thrives, and it's because our country's built on it. And so we have to dismantle it piece by piece.
In a related issue, our nation has 4.5% of the world's overall population and around 20% of the world's incarcerated population, and a vast majority of those are people of color.
Yes.
At the same time, we are now seeing crime rates rising across the city and in our district. What is your plan to address both of these issues?
Well, they do go hand in hand. And I think that these issues are due to poverty, due to suffering, due to not having the services that we need when it comes to mental health services, when it comes to, social services, when it comes to making sure that our, um, you know, services are actually helping people and not harming them. You know, um, sometimes recidivism is easier than it is to, um, you know, try to find a warm bed and food. And I think that, sometimes we have to make sure that we are making it so that people are getting the services that they desperately need and want. We are seeing that our communities of color are the ones hurt the most, obviously, throughout our system, a very racist system. Our criminal justice system is very racist. And we've seen that people have um, only seen the division of our communities more so due to the racism that is so rampant right now. And so I think that it's really important that we are looking at the very real things that I was just talking about when it comes to systemic racism throughout our system. And I think that we have to make sure that we're ending it through education and helping people to understand why there's this history. And then hopefully we are dismantling again, piece by piece, including our criminal justice system, the racism that is within it. People wanted to put in things like the word dangerousness into our judicial system when that is a very subjective term, and I think that that is a racist term that makes it so that, people can decide, quote unquote, who's dangerous and who's not, right? So I just wanted to make sure that we are looking at what's actually happening and not creating more and more racial divide.
On healthcare, many American families are one ER visit away from financial crisis.
That's right.
What's your specific plan for reducing the impact of the cost of healthcare on New Yorkers?
So on the state level, we were obviously very supportive of the New York Health Act, coverage for all, and universal health care. And I think that one of the things on the federal level that we have to do is, we have to pass Medicare for all, right? Like we have to be able to pass our Health Act, and we have to make sure that we have the ability to, make it so that people are not one medical emergency away from homelessness or some kind of huge financial crisis. It's a uniquely American thing to have all of these resources, have all of this care available, and yet have so few people be able to afford it. And I think that we have to make sure that we are changing that right now. I had a bill, obviously, in the assembly that would limit would cap the amount that people would need to pay for insulin. And I think that, we should have capped it on the federal level. There was movement to cap it for the entire country to $30. And I think that that's something that's very reasonable because, 1 in 10 people have diabetes, and it's life or death situation where people are literally rationing their medication so that they don't have to choose between, food on the table versus staying alive. I think that we need to make sure that we are capping the amount that we are charging for insulin and other meds like that. It doesn't cost a lot to make anymore. It doesn't cost a lot to administer anymore. And I think that it's so important that we are capping the cost to consumers. So bills like that, I think, are a way for us to be able to help to make sure that people are doing preventative care rather than ending up in the ER and costing them medical emergency and their future.
On education. Education debt is crippling for many young people. What specifically do you propose to do about the soaring cost of higher education?
So obviously, I am somebody who does believe in making sure that we are ending student debt. I think that we need to make sure that we have financial possibilities for America. And I think that there are so many people who are, literally just unable to, get out from under their giant amounts of student debt. People end up paying for their student debt for 10, 20 years, some. And I think that it's really important to make sure that people are able to, get out from under it. It's kept a whole generation from homeownership. It's kept a whole generation from being able to start their own businesses. It's kept a whole generation from financial possibilities, economic possibilities that would help to enrich our country. And I think that it's really time for us to make sure that we are forgiving student debt.
Ms. Niou, you see yourself as a champion of working people and certainly hardworking immigrants and minorities. Many see the 24-hour workday with only 13 hours pay imposed on home healthcare workers as a serious abuse of workers here in our community, mostly older Asian women, but as well as wage theft. What will you do to be sure the 24-hour workday ends and these workers are paid what they are owed?
So as you know, I have been on the bill to make sure that we end the 24-hour workday. This is something that is a state issue, and we have to make sure that we are actually ending that. I have continued to push it. I've also been on this fight since like 2017 to make sure that we are actually reimbursing our workers the way that we should on the state level and the federal level as well. And I think that one of the things that I have been in very long conversations with Assemblymember Ron Kim about is actually stopping this like very, very antiquated, mediation process. The forced arbitration process is very antiquated. And I think that we need to make sure that we are actually allowing for our workers to be able to be compensated back when wage theft is found. And as you know, wage theft was found across the board for many, many, many different home care agencies. And so we have to make sure that we are actually stopping that, preventing that, and siding with the workers on that.
Thank you, Ms. Niou. Thank you for joining us today.
Of course.
We appreciate it very much. And
Thank you so much for having me.
And we will see you on the campaign trail.
See you on the campaign trail. Bye, Richard.
Bye. Thank you.